Welcome, guys, to an episode of the Evolution Podcast. Today, I've got a special guest. We're going to be discussing everything from personal fitness, your wellness. But before I introduce my guest, I want to go ahead and get a little bit of a background story. So, April, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hey, it is such a pleasure to be here, and I am honored to be here on your platform. So, introducing myself, well, I'm April Chavez. I'm the host of the Wellness Driven Life Show. That's the big thing that I have going on right now. And I concentrate on overall well being and wellness. My passion and goal and desire is really to help evolve humanity. And so, our platform is really an educational platform.
Interesting. So, help evolve humanity. So, expand a little bit on that. What do you mean by help evolve humanity?
Well, that's a great question, right? Because there's a lot of different ways that we can evolve, right?
That's
And
true.
we're doing just that. And so the way that I mean that is really by giving information, giving stories of that really are inspiring to others in order to take action to improve themselves. And I think that that is really the greatest way that we do evolve as a species is by simply improving ourselves. It's that idea of who we are, the idea of self, and really making that better when we have that idea of it, when we have the understanding of it, the reflection of it, etc.
Interesting. So, how did you get started into the wellness industry?
That started many, many year ago.
Okay, we have some time, so do share.
We have some time. So I grew up with an autoimmune disease. I've had symptoms my entire life. I was diagnosed with systemic lupus at age 15. So wellness has always come to the forefront because it had to. It did by nature. And so I started kind of diving in early on what made me feel better and perform better with whatever I was doing. In a childlike sense, it propelled me in this direction of I just want to be like the other kids, right?
Mm,
I didn't want to be the one that couldn't participate in sports and couldn't do this and that. Or if I couldn't, what else can I do in order to be a kid and to be alive, right? And so I never wanted my disease to define me. Fast forward, that really helped me make the decision to go into law enforcement. And I often was really attracted to like male dominant fields because I was always trying to prove to myself and the world that my disease didn't define me. And there's a lot of other things that, helped with the decision making process, but that certainly has a big picture of how wellness really started coming into my life and why it was important to me.
interesting. So you get into the law enforcement space. Okay, now unpack a little bit. How does it affect you in the sense? Is this something more of like you get tired easily? Because I'm not really too familiar with it.
Yeah. Well, one of the best ways to describe it is that your body is fighting against you.
Mm,
I think that's just one of the simplest ways to describe it because lupus, it shows up in all sorts of different ways. It's an autoimmune disease. And so it's inflammation, right? And anything that when we have inflammatory markers that are raised, we have complications within the body. The body's like, what is this? What's going on? And so I like to call it my superpower, though, because my body shows me things really quickly that it doesn't like. And on top of that, I was able to probably late 20s, early 30s, started to see patterns within my life of when I was getting really sick or when I was hospitalized. Um, you know, really, really big flare ups in life were really caused by certain events that happen, big stress, right? And we know this now with science that stress, I like to say stress is the number one killer. That's really simplistic. But if you go deeper than that, what is stress? Stress is emotions. And so you can go deeper and deeper into that. And so emotional responses are what cause us to have stress in our life, causing the inflammation, causing the dis-ease.
got you. Okay, okay. I see. I see the word play there. Ease. So basically not at ease. Okay.
Yeah.
That's a good one. That's a good one. So you get into law enforcement. Were you a cop? What were you doing specifically in law enforcement?
Yeah, definitely had the boots on the ground there, had a lot of experience. And, it happens so quickly too. I learned so much going into that field. And specifically in the realm of emotions, right? Because you can't go into that field and be, performing at your greatest level if you don't know how to control your emotions in some capacity, right? You're going to get in a lot of trouble if you don't. And you're there to help aid. It's a public service position, right? So you're there to help. You're there to help negotiate, to put out the fires, right, and to assist in whatever ways. And things happen so quickly where you have to respond very fast. So that's where I first learned about breath work and being able to, lower that heart rate in major situations. If you have to hold somebody at gunpoint or what have you, and to protect yourself and others around you, it's something that you have to get a hold on very quickly because your motor skills aren't functioning properly, right? So if you have to handle your tools, or you have to, handle somebody else, then you want to be able to function properly, and all that blood is pumping to those major things. It's a fight or flight, right? And so first learning breath work and how to lower that heart rate in a really quick momentary was very powerful for me. So I learned so much on navigating emotions and lowering heart rate and breath work. And so it was a field that served me immensely.
Interesting. Okay, so let's unpack that. We're gonna get back in. We're gonna get to the emotional part, but what are the fun stories? Because how long were you in law enforcement?
Well, I liken law enforcement, just like many people in first responders, right? Military. It's like dog years. There's so much that happens so fast. So I don't like to go into details necessarily about how long I was, because it's not about that. It's about the experiences that you had. And so, for instance, when I was serving people, I realized very quickly that our thoughts and emotions, we just continue this loop, right? And people would go back to, even though you give them all of the information, all of the services, all of the aid that they need to get out of bad situations, they just go right back into it. And so there was a lot of profound moments where, I realized this and how we just do this naturally in human nature.
Interesting. Okay, so I guess that's what allowed you to be able to basically be able to transition now into what you do in the wellness space. So now,
Yeah, big part of it.
so what areas do you necessarily focus on as far as because I understand there was a dis-ease, but what areas necessarily do you focus on? Do you see the problem areas where basically people come in and say, "Hey, I have an issue with this, I have an issue with that"?
So are you talking about personal coaching?
Yeah.
I don't tend to serve people with ailments, physical ailments, so to speak. We all have those different times in life, right, where we have problems come up physically, mentally, emotionally. Uh, and I like to say that wellness is under this massive umbrella, because it is. It has all of these different buckets that you don't want to just stay on one thing, because it's not going to fix everything, right? It's not going to be that overall picture, that wholeness piece of us. And so I like to bring it down really simply. That's spiritual, intellectual, physical. And the reason I do that, and it's SIP, if you want to throw an acronym in it. And the reason it's not backwards is because nobody wants to piss on themselves, right?
Oh
Because
yeah, that's true. Yeah,
so
if you said the other way, yeah.
the physical doesn't always necessarily come first. The spiritual piece is really, really key.
So how do you so explain it, unpack a little bit the spiritual, because are we talking about crystals? Are we talking about what necessarily are we talking about when we talk about the spiritual?
That's a great question. And no, I don't dive into crystals or anything like that. But that's a great point, right? Because there's so many things out there. When we and there's a lot of woo woo out there. And so even with my show, I don't specify or go into only interviewing people in the spiritual realm, because that's not the message. But when I talk spirituality, I'm talking about that of which is greater than ourselves, that of which is greater than this physical body, what we're all connected to, the unseen, but can be felt if you tap into it long enough.
Okay. The unseen. Okay, now we're getting into the woo woo here a little bit. Unseen in what sense? I'm because we had what 2 3 episodes back, and we phenomenal guest, and we spoke a little bit about the spiritual, and she was a what do I call it, like a spirit. I'm not going to get into it. But what necessarily do you mean by the unseen? Like, how does that help
Mm,
your wellness? Because when I'm thinking wellness, I'm thinking more of, okay, I'm gonna go hit the gym, I'm gonna
yep.
get my body right, I'm gonna read a few books, meditate. But when you talk about spiritual, what are you talking in that? What do you expand on there?
Well, you just said a key word there, meditate, right? So that's what takes you into feeling that which you cannot see. It's going into that unconscious piece of us. And, I think a really good way of explaining it is like radio waves, right? You can't see it, but you know it's there because it's sending communication out. And there's so much science to back this. Dr. Joe Dispenza is one of my favorite people to follow because of all of the science and the research that not only has he brought, but he continues to enlighten the world. Another really great resource is the Heart Math Institute and all of the things that they're doing and the science that they're bringing with the heart and brain coherence, right? We can't see it, but we can feel it. And we know that we have energetic fields around us, and there's all of this information, and frequencies of information are expanded from ourselves that we can't see, and that's all emotional frequencies. It's all, again, based on those emotional things. The reason that this is so powerful, because the fact that you ask the question, well, what do you mean by the unseen? And this is getting into woo woo. Well, I don't think so. I don't think that it's woo woo, and I think that that's changing very rapidly because we've had the opportunity to show it in science, that we can show the things that we don't normally get to see. And when you participate and you actively, intentionally take yourself to those moments, then that's when you get to feel it. And then that's when the proof is really there.
Interesting. Do you believe in the law of attraction?
Oh, yeah. Well, yes, yes, of course. And also to be said with that, it has to be, again, going into the emotion, the thoughts and the feelings. So if we just think about something and we want to attract it, it it's not going to really be sticky, right?
Mm.
It's not going to have the force of the attraction that we want it to have until we put the emotion behind it, and until we put intention, until we put specific asks behind that, right? You get really, really specific. A super easy example of that is if you desire a walk on the beach, what does it feel like to have your feet in the sand and your toes, in the sand and the water rushing over your feet? What does it feel like? What does it feel like with the breeze or the rain? What does it feel like when you're in love? And things like that. It's really bringing in the thought and emotion, all of it, to really give you a super powerhouse with attraction.
Interesting. I think let me see if I can find the book. I can't remember what the author's name. I think the name of the book is called I Am. I don't know if it's Norman Vincent, but it's the power of the I Am, right? I am. So,
Mhm.
but there's a lot of people that don't believe in law of attraction. For let me give it from a perspective of devil's advocate, right? We're coming in, and then everyone's like, "Hey, law of attraction. You have to get the feeling. You have to act as though you already have what you want." And then someone is going, "Well, that's faking it. That's pretending. I don't want to pretend."
Mm.
Let's say,
Yeah.
for example, love, for instance, right? And someone's from a perspective of they've never been in a relationship. And then you
Mm.
say, you can attract the kind of partner you want, and you're like, well, I have to what? You want me to act like just go, act like I'm in a relationship? Yeah, there's a part of people that there's a
Mm,
to hesitant to that part because they see it as faking it, as pretending.
yeah.
It's not real.
Yeah. Well, I would say, what do you think that Walt Disney, you think that he would be where he got to if he didn't dream big and pretend a little bit?
So now I have a question because I mean, if you guys aren't familiar with Walt Disney, I mean, it's the Disney because it was him and his brother that built the theme park, the whole setup.
Yeah.
Um, but there's a part of me that's kind of in the when does it, because there's all this is also me also kind of in a position of kind of
Mm,
like fighting it in a sense as to where does it get to the point where it's like, okay, this is just not, because let's say I want to be a multi-millionaire, right? My goal is 20 million and 25 million, right?
mhm.
You act the part, you think, oh yeah, the bill comes, it's 2 grand. You're out for dinner, for instance, bill, I like, oh, I gotta pay this. Like, wait, what? That when does it actually become a point where I from the question I'm trying to ask is because there's a part of people that would take it too far.
Yeah.
Right. So where does it ever get to the point where it's like, okay, this is not really you acting as though I can achieve this. This is just you just kind of living a fake life. How do you
Mm,
differentiate that?
the practicality aspect is what you're saying?
Yeah.
I think that when I think that it's very important to dream big. But that's the beautiful thing about going into meditation, right? When you allow and let go and surrender, all sorts of crazy things come up, right?
Hmm.
But when we're wanting to achieve a specific goal in our life, it's very important to be practical about it, right? And yes, becoming a millionaire is possible. It's maybe the 1%, right? But it is possible. So I would say that that's a practical aspect if that's something that you want. And then tying that into, well, how do I achieve that? And you're putting specific applications into it of where, okay, by this time, this is where I want to be. And, it's measuring it. All of those things are really important as well. But I think really you have to have the dream first. You can't get anywhere. It's begin with the end in mind. And that's said in numerous books. I mean, and so also inviting people to really do some research, but the key thing too is not only to begin in the mind and measure, but it's also to be consistent. Our show, for instance, I have a dream. I want to hit a worldwide audience. I have a message that we're more powerful than we can imagine. That's that evolved humanity piece, right?
Mm.
And when we started our YouTube channel and we started inviting people to be interviewed, um, I didn't really know necessarily where that was going to go, but I had this big end in mind picture, right? This is where I want to go. And
Hmm.
you act as if, right? You just know. You have this knowing, you have this faith, you have this belief, and you keep going. But if I didn't keep moving forward and concentrated on improving myself a little bit here and there, right? You can see historically through our flyers that we have or our thumbnails for the show, right? They look a little bit different and we're starting to change them consistently, but you learn more as you go, and because we're learning more, we continue to improve. And so it's within that consistency though, right? When I first started, I said, I'm terrified of going live, but I don't know how to edit yet. So I'm definitely going to go live because I don't want to deal with all that. And if I'm going to go live, then, oh my gosh, I only want to do it like once a week, or I only want to do it like maybe even every other week. Right. And plus, I don't know if I'm going to get the guests. Right. So there's all these what ifs. And that's what we do as human beings. We're like, I don't know if this is going to work. And then I realized, April, you can't get to your end goal if you can't build the traction and the momentum if you don't go more than that. And so I dived right in and I said, okay, 5 days a week, I'm going live.
Oh,
And we've
really?
done 5 days a week for a year on Fridays. Well, I should say, because this is probably going to be aired at a different time. February 23rd, 2024 is our year anniversary. We're featuring us being interviewed by Les Brown, who talks about the birth of the show. So, but it's because we had this idea, we had this plan, we put it into action, and we were so consistent with it, and we did it. And because of that, we're in the top 4 to 8% from my understanding of people who can do that. And we're still small, but we're mighty, and it keeps moving forward. Their subscribers consistently, and that's just proof. And that's what I call evidence. So when we talk about, well, how do people know, or they don't believe, or what have you, look for the evidence. It's just like when we're grateful, and we make sure to be grateful for so many different things, right? And the more that we invite that being grateful into something, the more it comes into our awareness. The more that we seek out the evidence of, the more it starts to come into our awareness, and it just heightens that elevation for us.
Interesting. So top 4 to 8%. That's pretty good. Now, how hard has it
Not as good
been?
as you.
Not as good.
You're up
No,
there.
I know, but the for me, I know track. Just recently, I started tracking the numbers. I usually don't track the numbers. It's kind of weird. I'm just more of a go with the flow. Like, let's see,
Yeah.
let's burn some bridges and build new ones as we not
Yeah.
like with people, but but it's not been easy for us per se. I did a challenge last year. I did 100-day live challenge. So I went live for 100 days straight. I went live on Sundays, Mondays, Tuesdays, and I remember my girlfriend were talking, and with the business, with everything going on, my schedule was crazy, and I had barely gotten any sleep, and it was 8 p.m. I'd been up since 12:30 that day, 12:30 in the morning, and it was 8 p.m. And I was on my way. I was like, I'm tired. I'm exhausted. She goes, well, have you
Mm.
gone live? And I'm like, no, I'm not gonna do it. Like, I'm not gonna do it. Like, it's just I need some sleep. She goes, well, this is day number, I think it was day number 70 something or 80 something. She goes, well, if you don't go live now, then you're gonna give yourself a reason to not go live another time.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, all right, fine. You know what? All right, fine, I'll do it. You know what? And I just came up with a script, and I just boom. And then the engagement was crazy. And I was like, oh hey, people like, hey, thank you for showing up and showing up. And it's like I'm like, okay, well, all right. But how hard has it been for you growing a channel and even growing, your platform to where it's at right now?
Oh my goodness. Our team consists of 3. And really, it's just 2.5, because it's me, my husband, and our cat. And the cat doesn't have thumbs, so she's not very helpful. And she's definitely the comfort, because there's a lot of 2 a.m.s. There's a lot of tears. There's a lot of sacrificing and putting other things on the back burner because you have this desire and this goal. And similar to you, you wanted to do this. You had this 90-day set goal, right? And you're like, I'm tired. And for me, I did something similar. I think it was a 30-day or a 60-day. I can't recall. But as a woman, I'm like, I don't have any makeup. I look like awful. I'm packing. I'm moving. Life happens. But because you said that you were going to, you're going to do it anyway. And that builds character. And stepping outside of our comfort zone is really part of that growth. It's part of the expansion. And so there's been so many times where I have stepped out of my comfort zone, where I'm nervous about interviews. When you interview people that they're your heroes, right? And you've read their books for years and years and years. And they've just got this historical piece about themselves, and it's intimidating a little bit, right? So that's human nature too, where you run into things where, am I good enough? And am I going to be enough? And that happens often. So it's really meeting those fears head on, walking straight into the fire. I liken the show and being an entrepreneur as it's a fire hose to the face, period. It's one of the hardest things that you'll ever do, but I think it's one of the most beautiful things that we can do as a human being. If you look at technology and the fast pace of technology, I think this is one of the greatest times in history for people to step into entrepreneurship, because there's not a whole lot of excuses. You can chat GPT, hey, how do I write a business plan? There are so much at our fingertips that we can utilize in order to really do it, if we have the desire strong enough to do so.
Interesting there. Interesting points there. Now, I recently, so one of the motivations, because I think it was you mentioned, I think it was Les Brown, and he said something. He said, "Don't count the costs," right? In the
Mm,
sense as to it is you. There's also
yeah.
someone else that said this. She said, "It will cost you $1 million to make $1 million." All right. And then at
Or
first it was like,
more.
oh more, oh more. It will cost you more. But it's the and then someone else described it.
Mm,
We're paying the ignorance tax, basically, right?
mm,
So it's the taxes for not knowing what to do. It's the reason why it's costing you so much to do it. You
yeah.
know, like for instance, in our marketing strategies, we realize like I never used to do a lot of on Instagram. Even today, I honestly, my team still tells me, "Hey, you have to post stories." I'm like, "What am I gonna post? I don't, well, I'm driving to work today. Oh wait, I'm taking out the trash. Oh wait, I'm
Mhm,
doing this. And it's like you have to post one. You have to post one. I'm like, why? But recently
mhm.
we're doing a webinar on the 26th, and we just put out an ad, and we put out, made organic, posted, and we did an ad on Instagram, and we had on Facebook and Instagram, but most of everyone came on Instagram. I was like, really? Why? That's weird. But the
Yeah.
weirdest thing was because I've been posting so much, everyone's like, wait, I know this guy. Let me go ahead and, join what he's doing. And the reason why I'm saying that is because I think it's cost me. I've been in the entrepreneurship game now for, better part of almost 5 years. And I would say the amount of money that I have spent in the ignorance tax has been way more than I have probably made in just,
Yeah.
but also, which makes me ask, curious about this. Do you think entrepreneurs are born or made?
I think we can make ourselves into whatever we want to make ourselves into.
So let's unpack that. Let's unpack that in a way. Okay.
Mm.
So what? Only about what? 10% of businesses survive the first year, and I think less than another 5 or 6% survive after 5 years, right?
Mm.
And so I'm looking at the math and I'm thinking about it, right? Why is it that some people become successful and other people don't? Is it luck? Is it, maybe they had, daddy mommy's money? Is it maybe that they, maybe they had a $3 million seed money? Why? Because some people quit sooner than others. Like your show, for
Yeah.
instance. I was talking to someone else, and he says, if you've done more than 10 episodes on a show, podcast show, whatever it is, you're already in the top 5%. Because most
Wow.
people, most people
Yeah.
quit before, because just think about it. Your first 10 episodes, who watched it? You
Yeah.
know, yeah. When I was on Spot, so I was looking at. I actually saw the recent track numbers on Spotify, and I'm always very curious when people leave comments or when people like watch it. I was like, oh, okay, who's this? And I remember the first few episodes, nobody watched it. It was like maybe
Mm.
0, 1. I'll be like, hey, I'll talk to my friend, like, hey, man, listen, I just dropped an episode. You might want to, there's something to learn about it. But nobody was watching it, the first few ones. So, and that's the reason why I'm thinking about it is some people quit sooner than others. So that's
Oh,
why I'm like,
yeah.
do you think they're made or is it born? And if they're made, what is the special ingredient to make them?
There's a lot of special ingredients because it's putting yourself in this extraordinarily vulnerable position. No matter what field you go into as an entrepreneurship, because it is you, it's your baby, is your vision. And so you are putting you full out. There's no net to catch you when you're working for somebody else. They have all of that done and already, there's that safety. It's those who are okay with stepping out into the unknown, into that uncomfortableness, because it's very uncomfortable and it continues to be uncomfortable because you continue to grow and expand. I think some of the people that do the best are those that are life learners, that they're excited about the unknown. They're willing to put themselves into those spaces. They're willing to have a lot of tears and keep moving forward. And I think in one of the Rocky movies, he was telling his son, life hits you hard and it'll keep you down if you let it. And so it's not how many hits you can get, it's how many hits you can take and keep moving forward. And I'm not saying that properly, but you get the point. And so it's really being able to be okay with that. It's not taking things personally, because no matter what, you're going to get cut down at some point by people. People are going to put you down, especially your friends and your family, for a lot of people, which is really amazing, right? It's like, well, the people that we think are supposed to support us the most are actually not supporting us. And for whatever reason, it's that, crab in the boiling pot mentality, where they instead of helping each other get out of the pot, they're bringing each other down. And people, for whatever reason, don't like to see other people succeed sometimes. And that's okay, because that's not your people and that's not where you're going. Something really incredible happened. We made this big move from Colorado. We're Colorado natives, and we moved to Texas. And it was a really hard transition, very difficult. We did it for job promotion. And so we took the opportunity to really expand ourselves, right, in that direction. But it was not easy, because we're moving away from what we know, what's familiar, what's comfortable. And so making big moves is very difficult. All of your family. So when we were leaving and we had the U-Haul packed and we're driving out of the state of Colorado, and I drive this highway every single day, I kid you not, I've never seen this sign ever. And the sign said, "Don't look back. You're not going that way." And it was this really profound moment of, okay, I am stepping into the unknown, and here we go. We're out for a wellness driven ride.
Interesting. No, I love it. So what's keeping you in the fight? Because you mentioned some key points. The
Mm,
people who you expect to support you, your family who you think it's by your side, they're there with you. You want to go out to the bar, they're like, "Hey, let's go." You want to, they're there. But the moment you say, "Hey, you know what, guys, I kind of want to do something a little different," um at first, someone said, it's like, at first they will support you. At first they will be like, we're 100%, you want to do that 100%. But then you start doing better than they do,
mhm.
then it's like, because people will support you when you're down. Because
Yeah,
I was talking to a friend of mine, and I said, if you were right now, the same people, who condemn whatever it is, if you were out on the street, they will happily give you $1
yeah.
as a beggar. They would happily give you $1, saying you're begging for money. Here's $1, whatever it is. But if you have something that's going to push you up, like, "Hey guys, I want to, support this business." Oh, how do we know it's a legal business? How do you know how do you even know what you're even talking about? But if you say, "Hey," because when you're doing better than them, especially when they know you, there's this, you make them feel uncomfortable.
Yeah, I think that's the key thing, right? Most people, this is why we have a 1%, right? The 1% that are making it big, that are doing big things. The 4 to 8% of people who, when they start a YouTube channel, uh, that actually make it. And it's because most people don't dream big. And when they see those big dreamers, either if you're far enough away from him, they can be inspiring, right? I think
Mm,
that's why a lot of businesses do really well in this virtual world that we live in, because they don't have this direct relation with them. But so there's some magic about it. It's inspiring, right? And it's appealing. But when it's really close to home, it's very uncomfortable, because they're uncomfortable with where they're at in their own life, and they don't want to shift that or change that. There's a lot of people that would want to be more at their comfort level. They stay in the positions that they're in. They don't move. They're comfortable with that. And so I want to go back to your question, though, so I'm answering it properly, because now I just forgot about it. But I think you asked something about, maybe family, and so I want to go back to your question.
no, no, absolutely. But the question was in the sense as to the number one supporters that you think you have, the
Yeah.
family, the friends, the people that are supposed to be there by you, right? When you stop succeeding, those are the same people that are going to try to tear you down, based off of the crabs in the bucket, that you
Mm,
mentioned earlier.
yeah.
But then another key thing there is what's keeping you in the fight, right? And the reason why I
Yeah.
say it's a fight is,
Because it is.
so um
Or it
have you
can be,
it
if you
can be.
if you perceive it that way. Yes.
But are you familiar with Patrick Bet David.
No.
No, okay. He's a YouTuber, podcaster, and he's in the financial space. He came up with a book. So one of the things I love doing is I like audiobooks and I also like reading a book. So he came up with a book called Choose Your Enemies Wisely. Okay. So I was like, all right, you know what? This is just another book. But this is a
Mm,
business planning book
yeah.
called Choose Your Enemies Wisely. I was
I
like,
like it
okay,
already.
well, this is gonna be fun. So I picked the book up, I'm reading the book, and he says if you have all emotions and no logic, you are very good at having getting everybody yeah fired up, but there's no system, so hence you don't succeed. If you
Hmm.
have all
Hmm.
logic but no emotion, you just sound like, well, this is the product I have today. You guys want to, okay, yeah, and then it's like people like, no, I'm not interested. Thank you, bye.
Right.
But he goes, you
100%.
need something emotionally firing you up. He's like, so he tells a story of someone insulting his dad. Yeah, so they were in a hospital. His dad was sick. His dad just had a heart attack. He was sick. He was in the hospital. And he was like, hey, you guys need to get to me. You guys need to get my dad. And then they said, and the nurse said, well, you're in a public hospital. You're not paying for this.
Uh-huh.
So why do we don't you wait in line like everybody else?
Right.
And then he made a promise. He's like, this will never happen again. And now the dude is worth, I think he sold his company for $250 million.
Wow.
So he said that choose you. And so then I bring it back in my business, and I'm like, okay, so I'm writing down. I'm like, okay, who's am I, so then I start playing back all the people in my head who doubted me, especially the family members who were like, yeah, what are you doing? Who's this guy? All that. I remember my own blood sister tried so hard. She watches this podcast, and that's why I'm going to say it. She tried so hard to sabotage everything I was building. Like, I'd never had anyone try harder than this. This is not
Mm.
like this is a blood family. This is a family member.
You're in familiar territory. I
Yeah,
hear
and
you.
she tried so hard. And it
Yeah.
was so weird because I thought she was always my biggest supporter. And then what ended up happening was a year and a half later, something tragic really happened. And I feel bad for her.
Mm.
And she came to me and she said, and she's like, long story short, we lost our dad. So her family kind of things happen. And she was like,
Mm.
I don't, I don't have anywhere to go. I don't have anything to do. You're the only one I have to. And fast forward, this was what, 7 years ago? And I paid for all of her college degrees, three of them,
Beautiful.
and she's still going to college for weird things that I don't even know why you need to. But the reason why I'm bringing that up is because this was the one person that growing up I thought, even to this day, I'm still thinking about it. If I remember when I have another sister, and she told me, she goes, well, the one person that's been doing everything against you is your sister. Just want to say what you, and she admitted to it. She's like, yeah, I am. And the only reason why she was doing it was because I was her ex-husband at the time perceived me as a threat.
Mm.
Her
And why?
ex-husband that I didn't even know.
Yeah.
So
And
and it
why?
was just it was a weird scenario, and then to this day, and I play that back in my head, and I'm like, oh, my own family, and it kind of gives you trust issues. But it's just kind of like, how do you stay in the fight when family
Mm.
members, things, maybe that vendor that you're hoping for doesn't deliver. You lose customers that you're like, wait, this is my biggest. We had our biggest customer 2 years ago, thousands of dollars just abrupt, like, hey, I'm switching. I'm like, whoa. It was just it's yeah. So how do you stay in the
Yeah,
fight?
there are the ups and downs, the ebbs and flows, 100%. And I'm very familiar with your story. I too have a sibling that, I have a couple siblings, and neither one of them support me.
Mm,
They think I'm doing some MLM or selling them something, or I don't even know. They don't see what I see. And I think that's a big thing. Again, going back to people don't have the vision that you have. They don't have the dreams that you have. They can't see what you see. And it's not easy because me, especially, I'm a very emotional person,
mm,
very. And so I have had to learn to navigate. We talked about, the intellectual piece and the emotional piece, and how you have to really marry these,
mhm,
to have this beautiful balance, the yin and the yang, the light and the dark. And you have to embrace all of those things about yourself to really, navigate life a little more gracefully. But it certainly didn't take. This is not overnight. This is continuous work. This is that improvement a little bit every time. This is not taking things personally. But when I first started, I was probably midway through. I was kind of dived a little bit into entrepreneurism throughout life. But my brother, he he said something to me that was so triggering and so hurtful, because you grow up with these people and they're your life. That's who you love and who you fight with and who you do all the things with, and like they're your people, and you feel that they should be like have your back all the time, and maybe because you do or what have you. But he said something, and I did not do business for 2 years, two
Wow.
years after that, because it affected me so much. I allowed it to affect me. That's the key too. My perception, my beliefs led me to feel that I wasn't worthy, that what I was doing was ludicrous, that I should be doing something else, that I should just be working for somebody else to provide for my girls. I've been a single mom for a long time, and so it's been, working a couple of jobs, really the fight for survival. And so it was difficult to dream. And I think there's also different times in life where we can really navigate those dreams. And that's putting that practicality piece into it, right? Maybe it's not the right time, but you start to prepare, in the meantime. What are the things that you're listening to? What are the ways that you're growing in order to, when you are ready to step into that position and that form of light in the world, you're more prepared because you were putting in the work in a different way. And you can say that for physical ailments or anything that happens in life. It's just, what are you doing to seek that progress and that improvement? I also think that that's why we, want to get out of bed every single day, is because we have something to look forward to improve with ourselves or to serve somebody else. But when it comes to family and friends, they're not always going to be there along the way. When we talk about, who are the 5 people that inspire you the most, and those should be the people in your wheelhouse, right? It doesn't mean it has to be physical people. It could be people who inspire you through books, through audibles, through podcasts, through talk shows, right? All of those things, even historical figures. But those are the people that you want to concentrate on, that you want to inspire to be like. And I heard somebody say something that was really brilliant when it comes to family. We think that we need to be around people that are negative
Mm.
because they're blood, or because they're friends, or because we're just, that's what life is right now, right? And at the same time, you're not going to change that until you choose to change that. Let's take our mothers, for instance, right? You're like, well, it's my mom. I have to be around my mom. But your mom is one of the most negative people on the planet, right? Like, they're always talking negatively, or always, they're in their rut. They're in their story continuously. And it just drains you every time you're near them. Well, guess what? There's holidays that we can
Mm.
spend time with our parents, right? And time with our siblings. That's a beautiful thing about stepping into adulthood. That's the choice and advantages that we get being an adult. We don't have to be in that environment if we don't want to.
Interesting. Now, doesn't that make you a little bit? I'll give you an example. In sales, you're told rejection is just like it's part of the game. Like if you
Mhm.
get into sales and you don't expect to get rejected, then you're in the wrong industry, right? Someone liking sales to basically being a football player that's that doesn't want to be tackled, right? Wrong sport, going
Right.
to swimming. So so in a way you almost become numb to it, right? And the
Yeah.
same thing with family. When you have so much negative, especially the people around you, the blood relatives that obviously you distance yourself, doesn't that start to make you a little bit cold? So let's so in a
Mm.
way,
Yeah.
in a way it kind of,
Yeah.
because I'm looking at it from a perspective of what my sister did, and I remember I was talking to a friend, and he said, if I was you, dude, I would have blocked numbers. I would block numbers, emails, Skype, even though we don't use Skype
Mm.
anymore, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, every single platform. And in a way, doesn't it make you cold? Because you have to almost say, no, I refuse to engage with you. It's like,
Mm.
they text me like, well, I'm not going to. I'll see you on Christmas. I'll see you on Thanksgiving. Right? Doesn't it
Yeah.
is there's an element of you, that element that we become almost a different person to be able to deal with that part of ourselves, especially when you have to numb it down. Like a mother that doesn't
Yeah.
support you.
This is a question that I have contemplated in my mind so many times in life. And I've gone to extremes where I delete and I separate myself completely, sever myself from people in my life that I realize are no longer serving me and they're not going where I'm going. And I think that there is a benefit to that. And I think that also there is lessons in that. And I think that there is a way to be graceful in certain things. The biggest thing that I have learned to know is that we are all on our own life journey, that we're all on our own spiritual journey, so to speak. I liken this as a mother, and I think that when we have our children, we want so much to protect, to guide, to shelter. We don't want them to have the hardships and the experiences of life, because life is hard. It's hard for all of us, right? If we have that idea of it, and things happen, no matter what, we're not going to get away from that. And we're here to experience that at the same time. So knowing that, I think, is very helpful. It has been for me, that knowing that we're each on our own journey, then that's okay. It's okay. Whatever they say, do, act, that's them. It has nothing to do with me. And the hot topic nowadays is narcissism, or being selfish, or and that's one of those things and topics where people go into, where, like you said, are you getting too cold if you start to do these things? And again, saying that I think everybody's on their own journey, and what makes sense for you, because truly what helps us evolve and those around us is if we continue to better ourselves each and every day. And it's not putting other people into, um not completely getting rid of them, or being mean to them or anything like that, but it's also holding this space in your heart and being compassionate about them. But you can do that from a distance. It doesn't mean that you have to do that or engage with them.
Interesting. So that brings me to a question then. Is narcissism, because there was a study, and I'm probably going to butcher this, but there's a most successful CEOs or most successful entrepreneurs have a high trait of narcissism.
Yeah, I think that there needs to be some more. I think maybe there needs to be, and I don't know enough about it. Like you said, I'm going to butcher this, but I don't know enough about it either, or the studies. I'm not a specialist in narcissism. I certainly have seen people what I would assume are narcissistic tendencies, absolutely 110%. And what is the difference between being someone who has an immense amount of self-love and self-care and pride and all of those things and those features, in comparison to. And I think that really what distinction the excuse me, what separates them is a person who has that love and compassion piece, that human emotion piece. It's those that are unable to have that is what really probably makes a true narcissist, or those narcissistic tendencies. And again, I am no expert in this. I couldn't, uh, say one way or another. It's just
No,
my opinion, that,
it,
or
it
from my experience.
it's fine. It was just more of in the census too. So I've been very curious on understanding what are the key traits that make somebody successful. Like most of the
Yeah.
people who I have um interacted with, most of the people who I have seen have achieved that high degree of, like, for instance, especially high degree of individual, I wouldn't say more individual, but they're very much like the top salesperson of any industry has a very high
Mm,
narcissistic trait, right? And they turn a lot of people off because you just see it as like, well, this person's too full of themselves. But you put them, they're doing, I know personally a few people doing 1.5 to $2 million in sales of income generated themselves. But personally, you wouldn't want to have stay in a room and talk to them, because it's just like, dude, this is just like, I don't want to listen to you talk about yourself for like the next freaking hour.
Mm,
So
yeah,
in a sense, I
I
was
think
just
that's
curious. I
good.
was just curious in that sense, because I personally believe narcissism is almost an ingredient that's needed, because when people don't
Mm,
believe in you, right? You're the only one that believes in yourself, so you almost have to turn them off. I'm like, well, you know what? You know, I'm gonna do me.
yeah, I think a big thing is that you know where you're going and you know what you
Mhm.
want to do. You want to know. So for instance, when um you open yourself up to have meetings with people, and we're living this virtual world, right? It's maintaining, a 15 or 20-minute meeting cap. That's it. You don't need any longer than that to discuss a brief initial introduction of something, right? Or so it's really harnessing in on your time and your energy of where that's going out to. If I know that this is where I want to go, then these other people who that's not their concentration, that's not where they're going, then I don't necessarily need to have a conversation, right? Because my time and my energy needs to go in this place. So I think that that can be off-putting to some because they don't have the understanding of that, or maybe they're opening themselves up to just anything and everything. But it's a choice, again, going back to me as the entrepreneur, or me as the successful business owner, know exactly where I'm going, and these are the things that I need to concentrate on. And if other people get opinion or offended over that, then that's their own problem, and it's not mine because I have a direction I'm going. Does
Interesting.
that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, we could get a little bit in depth. That's more of a, I mean, if we talk about narcissism and those traits, I mean, we could have a 2 to 2.5 hour conversation in that regard. But as we wrap up here, I've got a series of dumb questions. I like to say dumb questions,
Okay.
but we've since renamed them to the dumb fun questions after we had
I like fun.
she was absolutely phenomenal, and she goes, "There's no such thing as dumb questions," and I'm like, "Well, wait till you hear them." So,
Mm.
so I've got the first one here. It's kind of rapid fire. So, if wellness were a color, what color would it be and why?
Uh, it wouldn't be a color. I think of it more of like a brightness. Like when you consider source or God or the light, like when people pass on, they experience this bright light, right? So I think that's what wellness is, because I think that that's what we're trying to achieve and obtain to, is to meet both the physical and the spiritual aspects of our wholeness of ourselves. And so I wouldn't say that it's a color.
Okay. Can practicing relaxation techniques help me win the lottery, or at least feel like I have?
100%. Yeah, because relaxing is going into the creative mind. It's opening ourselves into the unconscious piece of ourselves. And I think that when we dream and we are meeting that creative self, that's when we are able to produce things uh, in this physical realm.
Okay. All right. Last one. If you had to choose a wellness mascot, what animal would it be and why?
Uh Well, the first thing that comes to mind is our beautiful teammate here at the Wellness Driven Life
A
Show,
cat.
which is the cat. And but be careful. They might have narcissistic tendencies.
That's true. They do. Cats 100% do.
Yeah.
I love
But,
it. Okay.
they've got 9 lives. Their purr box is, like, emitting all of these incredible vibrations and healing energies. That's also proven by science. So, they're an incredible creature, they get to see that which we do not see. They're really tapped into so many, aspects that we're not, and that's why they're awesome. So, there's
I
the
love it.
answer.
I love it. All right. So as we wrap up here, where can people find you? Anything? Any last words you wanna go ahead and give to the audience?
Yeah. Well, thank you for that opportunity. Driven Living is our mothership. So www.drivenliving.com is our website where you can find a free hug. You go to our website, and that is what our gift is to the world. It's giving free hugs. That's our ebook. And it's a lot of science backed information of the science behind that.
Okay, guys, go get a free hug. So the links are going to be in the description if you listen on YouTube. I always like to say I don't track the numbers on Apple Podcasts. So if you listen to Apple Podcasts, all 5 of you, the links are going to be in the description. And if you're on Spotify as well, it's going to be in the description box as well. Also on Spotify, I just found out that you could do this. Do us a favor and give us a 5-star review on Spotify if you listen to this right now. And then also do me a favor as well, hit that follow button because we're going to be dropping 2 episodes a week. And today I have April, and she's been amazing. And we discussed everything from the spiritual to the physical part of things. And we also discussed, we're going to cover hopefully in future narcissism. We'll be a future episode, future podcast. And don't forget to like and subscribe on YouTube as well, guys. It's a pleasure having everyone be on here. And April, it was an absolute pleasure having you on. And take care, everyone.